Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we're going to start taking notes on Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is all about making money. So we asked a lot of you students during class this past week if you were working. We may touch base with some of you that have experience with jobs, whether it's in the past or currently, because a lot of times you'll experience a lot of the same things that we're talking about in class here. And it's good to hear your perspective rather than just from the teacher, from myself and Mr. Najjar. So first thing we're going to talk about is hourly rate and overtime. Okay, so this is section 1.1. These should be in your notes packet, your chapter 1 packet that hopefully was included in your box of belongings that you picked up from the school. If not, you can just take notes on notebook paper, and then you can either staple those notes into your packet when you get your packet, or you can copy them into your packet. Okay, so hourly rate is the amount of money that you're paid for every hour that you work. So amount of money per hour that you work. So I believe minimum wage is either approaching $15 or maybe it's currently at $15, but that would be an example of your hourly rate. Okay, a lot of jobs are hourly. My job is salaried, meaning it doesn't really matter how many hours I work. I'm going to get paid this many dollars in a year. But there are a lot of like manual labor jobs will be hourly. And then you can make overtime with an hourly paying job. So we'll talk about overtime next. Overtime is when you work, a typical work week is 40 hours. So 8 hours a day times 5 days a week, typically Monday through Friday, but not always. So overtime is any hours that you work above 40 hours. Typically, we consider 40 hours and a full work week. So most industries that offer overtime will be over 40. I don't know of any that have a different number than 40, but that's what we're going to use just because it's so common. So examples of that would be, most of your service industry. So like working in a restaurant, servers, waiters, waitresses, retail stores, my brother is an electrician. He works on heating and air conditioning. Lives out in Las Vegas. I talked to him the other day. He said he's worked 63 out of 64 days. The only day that he had off was 4th of July because they wouldn't allow him to work. But he works 7 days a week, so he's working like 60, 70 hours. So he gets a lot of overtime. Makes a lot more money than what he would if he wasn't. So a lot of manual labor. Okay, your overtime rate, there's an incentive for you to work overtime, right? Let's say you make $15 an hour for the first 40 hours and it's Friday night, you're done for the week, you're getting ready to go home, and your boss says, oh, by the way, we need you to work 3 hours tomorrow. You're like, well, shoot, I don't want to work tomorrow. It's Saturday. I'm only making $15 an hour. And he says, no, I'm going to give you the overtime rate, which is they call time and a half. Sometimes it's double time. Usually it's time and a half. And it means that you're going to, instead of $15, you would make 1.5 times that for every hour that you work. So if you work 3 hours of overtime, you would actually make $22.50 for those 3 hours instead of the $15. The overtime rate only applies to any hours that are overtime hours. So overtime hours is usually time and a half. Okay, it's the rate you're paid for the overtime. A lot of times we see that as OT, overtime hours. Okay, so let's do some calculating here. If at any time you need to pause this video to write things down, please do that. That's the point of the video. So regular pay, it's simply going to be the number of hours worked. This will only be for the first 40 hours times your hourly rate. So for example 1, Julie works 3 hours each day on Tuesday through Thursday. So that means Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's 3 days. So let's see, let me write a quick calculation. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's 3 days. 3 hours each day. So I'll do a quick calculation. The total hours, 3 hours times 3 days gets me 9 hours, part-time job. Okay, $5.65 an hour. How much does she earn each week? So earnings is going to, well, we shouldn't call that earnings. We should call that her, I believe we called it her regular pay. It's going to be that $9. I'm sorry, 9 hours times $5.65. Please get your calculators. That comes out to $50.85. That would be Julie's regular pay. Okay, so next we'll find total pay with overtime. So there's 3 steps here. The first thing is we're going to find regular weekly pay. That's what we just calculated on example 1. Then we'll find the overtime pay, a little different process there. And then we'll find total pay by just combining the first 2 numbers that we get. So overtime pay, first we need to know how many hours they're working. So overtime hours is the number of hours worked minus 40. So in my previous example, I was talking about if you work 43 hours, 43 minus 40 means that 3 of those hours are overtime hours. Okay. To find this overtime rate, you take your hourly rate. What are you typically paid per hour? Multiply it by 1.5. That's why it's called time and a half, because you get an extra half of the amount each hour. That's your overtime rate. And then your overtime pay is going to be your overtime hours times your overtime rate. And this overtime, we say OT. Like in sports, basketball game goes into overtime. A lot of times you'll use OT. And then we find total pay by adding up our regular pay, whatever we made in the first 40 hours, add it to our overtime pay. Okay. So example 2, let's look at Sam. He gets paid $7.45 per hour as a cashier. 1 week he worked 43 hours. He's paid overtime at time and a half for all hours over 40. Find his total weekly pay. Okay, so his weekly pay is going to equal only 40 hours times his pay rate, because the first 40 hours are paid the regular pay rate. So that gets me $298. But that's not all he worked, right? He worked 43. So overtime hours, I'm going to take the total hours worked minus 40. Gets me 3 hours. For the overtime rate, I'm going to take his regular rate, his hourly rate, which was $7.45. I'm going to multiply it by 1.5 to get that time and a half rate. And we get 11.175. Now I know that if we're talking about money, I would never have, this is like what, $11.17.5. Eventually at the end of the problem, we will round it, but let's keep it as 0.175 for now to get an accurate calculation. So his overtime pay is going to be 3 overtime hours times $11 and that's 17.5 cents. And that's going to give us 33.525. We're going to round that to 33.53. All right, if that last number is 5 or above, we round the second number up. Okay, so his total pay, well, he made $298 for the first 40 hours. Then he worked the 3 hours of overtime and he made $33.53, which gets us a total of $331.53. Okay. Number 3 is very similar, so I'm not going to work that out, but we will have the key posted so that you can try that problem on your own. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this makes sense, and you can ask us any questions that you have once we get live in class. All right, enjoy the rest of your weekend.